Exactly, Taylor. That is exactly what is happening at the moment. It is possibly the worst place that she could have lay in this whole section, and you might be seeing a little bit of movement in amongst that bundle of grass, but that apparently is Kuchava. Whether or not it is her, well, I can't even tell you, because she's busy feeding inside there. I can't see a thing. All I can see is movement every now and then, so I think it is Kuchava, but I have absolutely no idea. What's happened is she's apparently killed a duiker out in the open section and has then dragged it into this bundle of grass, and it's the perfect place for a leopard, because at the end of the day she can feed inside there and there's very little that's going to spot her. So things like vultures, hyenas, the various other animals that could rob her of her carcass are not going to be able to see a single thing inside this thicket. No matter which angle you come from, there really isn't a good view anywhere. So we're just sitting and playing a patience game. What I'm hoping is that once she's finished feeding, because she is feeding quite extensively, I can hear her crunching every now and then. It's not easy to hear it, but every now and then we do hear a crunch, and hopefully then once she's fed, she will start to come out and come lie somewhere where we can at least see her and make sure of who we're looking at, and that there is in fact a leopard. But isn't that camouflage amazing? That leopard is no more than, I would say, 2 meters from where I am at the moment, and only when you look really closely and when you look for movement can you pick it up. So there you can see her rosettes just hidden behind all of that brown, dreary, drab grass. It is seriously amazing to see just how well these guys blend in. You would think that animals like this would easily be exposed at this distance, but it's just incredible to watch. Now, I'm pretty sure, like I said, she's going to go to town on this duiker. She's going to feed, she's going to try and restore the nutrients, get a bit of meat in to stay warm. Now, Anna Marie, you say she's just a blur of spots with that camouflage. Exactly, she's really not very much more than just a spotty coat behind some long grass. So it will get better eventually. We just have to be patient, and if there's one thing we've learned over the last little bit, is that being patient with leopards, you generally get rewarded. So while it's not a great view at the moment, and while we're not seeing too much of who this is or what's going on, in time, as things go and as she's fed, like I say, she'll get a full belly, and I don't think she's going to lie where the carcass is. I'm pretty sure she will come out a little bit, and we will then get her grooming after she's fed. And the reason why she's not going to lie exactly right next to the carcass is because there's going to be flies and there's going to be various other things that are going to be there, and they're going to drive her mad. Also, that grass will be damp, it will be wet. She'll want to come out, clean her coat up, and get herself a little bit more dry. So I'd imagine she will come out and sit somewhere, at least where we can see her. But our cat streak on Djuma continues, so we still have a good run. I don't know how many days it is now. How many are we? 18, I think. Lou? I don't know. Lou, maybe you can let us know. Which is quite phenomenal that we've had 18 days of cats, and I think all of them have featured leopards. I'm not 100% sure, but I think we've had... is it 20 days already? That's crazy. No, it can't be 20 days. I was back on the 10th, Lou, so it must be 17 days that we're on. 17 days of leopard and lion action, and we can't say no to that. And at the end of the day, it's going to change. Unfortunately, our run of cats is going to be really halted by the weather we've just experienced. This rainy weather is going to make life a lot more difficult. And you can see as soon as the grass starts to grow again, we're going to be dealing with sites like this to try and see the cats and to try and see what sort of animals we can spot is going to be really very difficult. Nikki, you're saying, could you imagine accidentally stumbling into that? Yes, Nikki, I could, because I have accidentally stumbled into that a few times. I've had situations where I've come around a corner and there's been this grassy patch like this, and you kind of all of a sudden just hear this low growl and this tail flicking, and right next to you is this big-eyed leopard just staring at you with its kill underneath its belly. It's really quite a freaky thing to see, and you certainly get a little cold shiver that runs down your spine, and you sort of look at it for a second and hope that that leopard decides not to come at you, and then you just try and get out of there as slowly and as methodically as possible. But it is a difficult thing to deal with, and like I say, I have had it a few times. I've had it with Lamula, I once walked around exactly like this, a similar situation, and I was tracking him, and I couldn't work it out because I couldn't find his tracks going past it, and my tracker and I were looking, and there was a little bush just like this, and we were walking around that bush. We must have gone around it about 4 times. Eventually, though, we spotted him as I was kind of going around the bush. I just saw these eyes staring at us, and he had been watching us going around and around him, and we were no more than a meter away, and he was just looking. So it does happen quite often. And leopards, the thing about them is when you do find them like that, is to just pretend as though you haven't seen them. So if you just kind of walk past as though there's nothing there, and you just pretend like you have not even in any way noticed a leopard, then generally they'll just flatten themselves and they'll watch you go by. It's very seldom that they'll be aggressive. It's only when they've got cubs or a food item like this and they think that you might steal it, will they start to get a little bit more upset. But unfortunately, like I say, we don't really have much of a view of him, of her, should I say. So we're just going to sit here and we're going to hope that this little leopard is going to come out at some point. We have to be a bit patient at the end of the day. It's not every day that we see leopard with a kill, and hopefully something like a hyena does rock up, because if a hyena does arrive and does come out, then maybe she'll drag this towards a tree and get it up into a tree, and then the view of her will be that much better. But it really is not very pleasant at the moment, and the camouflage just astounds me. I just see a little bit of movement every now and then behind the grass, but other than that, we've got very little to work with. Now, unfortunately, there is a gap that we would probably be able to see her a little bit better, but it would mean driving right on top of her, which I don't want to do at all. So I'm going to have a situation where I'm going to try and reposition just now and try and find another way to get in here. There is unfortunately 2 trees behind me, but I think if I just move slightly, I might actually be able to get into a situation where I can see her, at least just her head, because at the moment very little is going on. But interesting that we were talking about earlier this morning, we were saying that we'd have a situation where predators were going to be active in terms of hunting in the early hours of this morning, and it seems that was the case, because the guys were telling me that when they found her, this duiker was not even dead yet. It was still kicking. They could hear it thrashing around in the grass, and then she went and lay and then actually killed it and then started feeding off it. So it's these kind of conditions that we're going to see a number of different predators going after their prey items, and we're going to have a situation where I would imagine most of our leopards were fairly successful last night. Now, the thing is with this particular sort of situation is that unfortunately, as we were explaining earlier, is that to spot this now, if you didn't know that she was here, if somebody hadn't seen her standing up earlier, there's no ways that we're going to see them. And if she doesn't come out of this area for 2-3 days, we won't even know she's here. And that's what's going to happen with a lot of the other cats, and why I was saying it's going to be quiet on a cat front. But let me see if I can just try and reposition slightly. Senzo, if you can just push that stump off to the left a little bit for me. So if you, let's see if we can just push slightly back. No, we're not going to go. There's a big stump behind us. Anyway, we'll try and reposition and try and find a better way to do this while we're not on air. I believe Taylor is out in the Mara, and she has probably one of the things that I really wish I could see that we don't see here, and that is the beautiful, beautiful eland. No, so she's come out now and she's starting to move, which is really good news for us. So she's just on my left-hand side and is starting to come out and start kind of moving southwards, which I'm interested to see how far she goes, because she's gone a long way already from the kill. She's probably, I would say, getting close to 100 meters from where she killed it and is still going southwards. So I wonder if maybe she's going to head for water. That's possibly where she's going. I'm going to try and keep up with her. It's not an easy place to follow a leopard inside here. It really is very dense, very thick, lots of monkey orange, and it's a place that is designed not for vehicles. It really is a tough place. I've done a lot of walks around here and always laughed at the thought of having to follow a leopard through, and I never really had a chance to do it. I've had a few leopards in this general vicinity. Never really been taken through these blocks, but it seems as though today is that day and we're going to have a tough time of it. There are lots of aardvark holes here, lots of monkey orange, sickle bush. It is a horrible place. Do not go inside there. Please don't go inside there. You are going to go inside there, aren't you? But it's definitely Kuchava. Now that she's out and about, you can see her very clearly that it was her. She doesn't have the tatty ears that Tandi's got, still very clean faced, and for me she's always got this wide-eyed expression, I suppose a little bit like Tandi in a way as well. No, don't go and lie inside there. From one horrible thicket to another by the looks of things, but at least we've had a brief glimpse of her, and we've at least seen some sign of her moving. It was what I was hoping for, was once she had finished her carcass that she was going to move. I wonder, maybe she's got another carcass that she's going towards, and that's why she's heading into this little thicket, because it's almost like a place that she would stash a carcass. It's not raining, so there's no reason for her to go and sleep underneath there, but maybe there's something else that she's looking for. She's kind of sniffing around. No, don't lie down in there. Kuchava, really? Sorry guys, unfortunately this is what happens. No, she's gone right in there. Let's see if I can get round and get a better view of her. Just trying to have a look at her. It looks as though there might be a gap from the other side. MKP, you're asking, is it possible that a leopard's coat has changed and evolved to blend in drier winter months than it is obviously during the summer? I'm not sure. Leopards, as far as we go back, pretty much have had the same golden colored coat, and it's probably because they occur in just so many different places, and that spotted patterned coat that you see, it blends in with a multitude of different environments. So you'll see it blending in mountainous areas, grassy areas like this. It blends in even desert places where there's very little grass. Just trying to see if I can get in here. So I think it's more a case that it's just about the fact that it blends in so many different ways, and it can kind of keep her from being seen, whether it's in grass like this or whether it's in open plains like in the deserts or anything like that. Actually, there's really quite a nice view from here, so we'll have a good one. There we go. Sensor, how's that? So that's better. Now we can at least see. So I don't think it's evolved too much for the dry, wintry period. Remember that this animal's still got to survive 6 months of the year where it's green and lush, and that's going to need some sort of camouflage as well. So you can't have a situation where an animal's evolved only for a certain period of the year and for when it's dry. It's got to be able to survive outside of that, and that means that this camouflage pattern has got to work in those times too, and it does. I mean, if you see when the grass is green, you would think this lighter color would really stand out, but it doesn't. Those darker spots then start to match the dark dappled light that we see in the summery time, because remember, all these trees will have leaves on them, and there will be shade that is provided from all of that, and she'll still blend in incredibly well during the summer period. So the coat is more a fact that it needs to keep her alive all year round, not just from a dry point perspective, and when the color of the bush is this more yellowy color to match the kind of coats. It just means that they're a little bit more successful in the winter months. But now she's going to stop and start grooming herself, so obviously this is where she's decided to settle for the day. She's going to end up with a situation where she'll groom, she'll clean, she's going to use that rough tongue to get rid of any little bits of meat or any sort of loose fur, anything that's got caught up in the toes when she's been hunting, and get herself in good condition, and then she'll probably fall asleep right here. It is close enough that she can see directly towards her kill and be able to see the meal, and if something goes in that direction that she can get to it. But it's a little further than I first thought. I thought she was going to lie down, within 15 meters of it, but for some reason she's decided this is where she wants to sleep. She feels like being underneath a tree and branch. Maybe there's less wind in there and it just feels a lot better to be hidden inside, but at least we've got a nice view of her now. It's much better than what we had earlier, so we will take this for now. And she, at the end of the day, is probably not going to move much more this morning. I highly doubt she's going to go from where she is now anywhere else other than with her head down and sleeping, or not. Maybe she's now turned around and decided to just face us, which is really good. Now, Senzo's asking if I've got comms. Senzo, I don't at the moment, which is quite strange because everything seems to be in and working, so I'm not 100% why it's not working. So Lou, if you can just speak to me and hopefully I can hear you. Ah, there we go, you're back. Welcome back, Lou. Nice to have you back in my ear again. It's always good when you have the voices in your head. So there we go. Now, while Kuchava gets herself groomed and settled down for the morning, I'm pretty sure she is going to end up in a situation where she will sleep, but I believe James Henry has a rather large big cat that, well, is doing the same thing. And Well, James, she's not scared in any way whatsoever. She's just watching us and having a little look, and she's become such a different leopard to the first time I ever saw her. The first time I ever saw her, she was slinky and shy and moving around, and as James says, was named because she, who is scared and never used to like vehicles, and now she's become this relaxed, very, very chilled cat, and we're spending time with her, and we've been spoilt in the last sort of 2 weeks because we had her with that mating with Tingana, where we had her for almost 3 drives in a row that we got to see her up and down and moving and spending a lot of time around her. And I was thinking when we were watching her at that stage that she's a lot more relaxed, but I thought maybe it's just because of the mating and with Tingana, and that's why, you know, she's become that way, and that she's, because she's mating with him, her focus is on him and not on us. But this morning she's absolutely fine. I mean, the vehicles were parked right next to her and she was okay. Where are you going now, girl? You're just repositioning yourself. Yep, you've got to groom now on the tail as well. It's important to cover all bases. We've seen this with leopards over the last few days as well, is that there's one thing that a leopard likes to be, that is clean. And they will absolutely get every little part of them, and they groom tail and legs and coat and tummy and back and everywhere that they can, to make sure that they're in the best possible condition. And this is very typical behavior. After a kill that she's made and a feeding session, she will get like this, and she will groom and she will clean herself and make sure that there is nothing on her that is rotten in any way that could attract parasites or anything like that. And also she just doesn't want her coat to get matted with blood. And there we go. So groomed, and we've now decided this is where we're going to settle for the day. I don't think we're going to see too much more from Kuchava this morning. I think she's going to probably try and sleep. Siberia plays. The chances of Kuchava moving into Djuma, I suppose there is a chance, but I highly doubt it. What I think we're seeing is a slow push from Tundi and Shadow into Djuma. We've seen Shadow the last couple of days pushing fairly far in towards the central parts of Djuma, and then we've seen Tundi, well, she's been ranging all over the place. She was seen the other day even close to the Buffelshoek boundary, so she's really made a big push northwards and has been spending very little time down in the southern section and the southern parts of her territory. At the end of the day, Tundi, when I first arrived in the northern Sabi Sands in 2011, her territory was pretty much the western edge, eastern edge of Chitwa, and in Coral, and a little bit of Cheetah Plains. It was a tiny little territory far in the east, and slowly over the years it grew and shifted, and she started to come more into Chitwa, nets, vessels, little Gowrie, and she started to take that section. Now she's pushed heavily into Djuma, and that's opened up a gap for Kuchava to now start coming into this area. And so we're seeing Kuchava a lot more on Chitwa. I mean, I remember when we first started here, Kuchava was a Cheetah Plains leopard. The first time I saw her with Safari Live was all the way around 3 in a row Pan, which is very far east from where we are right now. But I think in Kanyeni's pushed her a little bit further west now, and she's now sitting sort of western Cheetah Plains and nets, and a little bit now into Chitwa. And I'm hoping what's going to happen is that Kuchava will take Chitwa for herself. At the end of the day, it's a successful place for her to den. She was also born in this area. She knows this area, and so hopefully she'll get Chitwa, and Tundi will then push up into Djuma and take over Kruger's territory with Shadow. So they'll each sort of portion that out, and Shadow the western side, Tundi the eastern side, and hopefully then Tundi breeds on our side, and we'll find her denning in the Mulawati somewhere. That's what I think is going to happen, and Kuchava then den somewhere on Chitwa. For that situation would be absolutely ideal for us going forward in the next few months. The nice thing is that hopefully little Kuchava, even though she's now sleeping, I'm hoping that the mating that she's just done in some way does take, because wouldn't it be amazing if she does produce little cubs? It would be another generation from the Kruger safari lineage, which would just be absolutely wonderful to see. You can see it's very slow breathing because it's not very cold today, and I mean it's not very warm, and so its rate of breathing can. She'll go back and feed a little bit later. Now, Stephen, you're asking, are there any leopards on Djuma that are not related at all? Mvula is not related to Karula. Any of the other males. So males generally, in terms of females, the ones that we've seen in Chila, I suppose in Chila is somewhat related to Karula. At the end of the day, she's from Karula's sister, basically. So there is a correlation there. So in terms of females, very few, in fact, and there's really not many at all. I think Inkanyeni would be the only one that isn't, because Salehesh's bloodline is in some way linked to Karula's bloodline. So all of those females, which is in Chile, in Sele, Tiani, that's all Salehesh's side of things. And like I say, they are linked to Karula. So very few females that are not linked to that bloodline, but there are the males in Tingana and Mvula, and I think Inkanyeni is not related to Karula. I might be wrong, but I think she might not be related as well. Other than that, no, that's everybody else is still in the sort of line of Karula's lineage, and so it's really been a successful. It's been a very, very successful lineage, and Karula, and own right, was just probably the most successful leopard. We were discussing it the other day, and we were saying that at the end of the day, her lineage has just been absolutely unbelievable. For a female to have produced as many cubs as she did and to have only lost one that we know about is just the most phenomenal thing. I don't know of another leopard in anywhere that I've ever read about that has had the same success as what Karula did and has contributed as much to a lineage as what she did for this particular section. The only slight dampener on what's happened with Karula is that it seems as though her females, other than Thandi and Shadow, have had really a tough time. We know Shavinzi has disappeared. We don't know where Shavinzi is. And then now with Shongile, we haven't seen her for a month, and also for the chance of Shongile to sort of take over in this area is going to be quite difficult for her. Thandi and Shadow are going to constantly push her. It's going to be really tough for her to end up being dominant in this section. While I don't think anything has happened to Shongile, I just think for her to actually become dominant, given how young she was left in this section, is going to be really, really difficult. So that's probably the only sort of downside, is that a lot of her cubs were male, and most of them are going to shift out of this area. We already don't see any sign of Nduna and Mishu, and Shivambalana is now also out of the Sabi Sands. Very few updates on him, and who knows where Hosanna is going to end up. At least with quarantine, he did end up close by, but Hosanna, I'm not 100% sure. So it's probably the only slight sort of tough part about it. I don't think it's a negative thing in any way. It's just a tough part. It would have been really nice if we had a lot more females and they'd all stuck around. At the end of the day, Thandi and Shadow have become legends in their own right, and they've also positively contributed. And so I suppose Kuchava is a really good example of Thandi producing a female and us inheriting another in that sort of line of beautiful females that there is with Karula and the cubs. So it's been interesting also just to watch how they've all split apart and how they've all ended up. And I really do hope that Shongile at some stage does settle and she becomes this individual that is able to dominate around the northern side of Djuma and maybe into Buffelshoek a little bit, until such time as Thandi and Shadow maybe move on, and then she can start shifting south back into her sort of natal area. It does happen like that quite often, as you will find female cubs push out away from their mom as their moms become older and they start to sort of get a little bit slower, so the younger females then start pushing the mother and actually start moving back to where they were born and then taking over those areas, exactly like what we're seeing with Shadow and Thandi. As life has progressed, they've encroached deeper and deeper back to the areas that they were first part of. So it'll be interesting to see where little Shongile ends up and where she goes, and also where Kuchava goes, because at the end of the day, both Shadow and Thandi are not the youngest leopards. They're approaching 11 years old. They're getting older in life, and at the end of the day, it's only another 3-4 years maybe that we can expect out of both of those leopards. And so Kuchava and Shongile have an opportunity then to push into those areas. So hopefully those will be the two females we then start to see a lot more, and maybe then in Chile and Tiani from the western side as well. But that's the kind of breakdown of our leopards at the moment. There's not really too many other females that I know of pushing in from Buffelshoek. It's really strange to me that Buffelshoek has such a low density in comparison to what we're seeing south of that on Djuma and the surrounding areas, and it must be to do with the fact that there isn't a really big drainage line that runs on Buffelshoek. So we have the Mulawati, which comes, but once it goes from Gari Dam, it becomes quite a small, very sort of insignificant drainage line. It's not massive, and so it seems as though the terrain up there is not as good as what we would see from Djuma and southwards, with bigger riverbed systems and dams that allows for leopards to really thrive. The other side of it, I think, is that the lions spend so much time on Buffelshoek that it's a lot harder for the leopards to do well there. They prefer these areas where the lions are not as dense and not as sort of structured and really in sort of that area. So I think that's probably why it's not happening, but it's strange to me. I would have thought we would have had at least some sort of lineage from the north, whether it be Manyeleti or Buffelshoek, that would have seen some leopards coming into our area and pushing, but we haven't seen even males. It's been very few. There's this unknown male that's arrived recently on Buffelshoek, but other than that, it's been a long time since a big male has come through and come onto the scene from where we are. Right, but I think what we're going to do with Kuchava is probably leave her to herself, because she's not going to do much this morning. I don't think she's going to do anything else, in fact, since she's laid down and rested. But before we go, Rich, you want to know, do the leopards in the Mara have bigger territories than those of the Sabi Sands? Rich, I'm not 100% sure, but I would imagine yes, the Mara leopards' territories will be larger, and the simple reason for that is that the density here in the Sabi Sands is probably a little bit higher, which means that there's a lot more competition for an area, and therefore you'll find that the territories are actually a lot smaller. Our territories are not very big for our females, and if you think that when we talk about Djuma and we're talking about all these different leopards that are around us, it's only a sort of 2,000 acre area that we're talking about, and all of these are featuring within that 2,000 acre area, which is crazy. So in the Mara, I'm not 100% sure what the density is like there. I think James and Scott and Brent and Jamie and Taylor would be in a far better position to answer exactly what the density is like and how big the territories are there. But I would imagine that their territories must be much larger than what our territories are here for both male and female. And you know, at the end of the day, here is a lot of competition for both sexes of the species, and that means much smaller territories. Right, now Kuchava is sleeping. Like I said, we're going to probably leave her here. We'll probably come back this afternoon and see what she's up to, but I believe James has made his way towards a tree line, and well, hopefully there'll be something lurking on said tree line.